On the 23rd of January 1951, 19 yachts left Wellington in the Canterbury Centennial Yacht Race to Lyttelton. They were hit by a fierce southerly storm, sparking the most intensive air search in the history of the Royal New Zealand Air Force to date. 2 yachts and 10 crew were lost at sea, never to be seen again.
Mayday, mayday.
The official weather forecast at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, January 23rd, 1951 was for light to moderate northerlies in Wellington, moderate easterlies across Cook Strait, and moderate to strong northeasterlies on the Canterbury coast. A fine day to start the Wellington to Lyttelton yacht race, organised by Banks Peninsula Cruising Club as part of their centennial celebrations. 20 yachts left Wellington with the dream of claiming first prize, although the Taiwera was a firm favourite after winning the Wellington Centennial race from Lyttelton to Wellington in 1940. There were boats of all shapes and sizes, including Argo, Windswift, Fantasy, Kaplan, Husky, Galatea, Hope, Joy, Wakariri, and the smallest boat in the fleet, the Aurora, at 22 feet. The Wakariri was actually the first boat in the Wellington area to have winches and a toilet, which was such a big deal they even had a toilet party. A collision between Argo and Nanette marked the start of the race, with Argo sustaining a broken bobstay. Half an hour after the start, another boat was forced to retire with a broken mast. The remaining fleet crossed Cook Strait in fair weather and easterly wind. Tuesday evening, the wind turned southerly, and by Wednesday night, the storm had developed. With gale-force winds and heavy seas, most yachts returned to Wellington. Captain of the Ocean Maid said they were lucky to be alive after a huge wave stoved in the cabin windows, forcing them to bail water for their lives. Several boats were unaccounted for, sparking the biggest search and rescue event in New Zealand's history to date. The missing boats were Astral, Riwaka, Rikawa, Argo, Husky, Aurora, Hope, and Fantasy. The Argo was the only one with a radio, so most boats didn't have radios in those days, I guess. So according to the logbook that we got from Fantasy, or copies of the logbook that we have from Fantasy, Fantasy was actually off the Clarence River, which is sort of it's reasonably close to Kaikoura actually, when the storm hit. And they had to turn and run with it with a sea anchor or a drogue before eventually they decided to try and make for Cape Campbell. So that's how far back they went, all the way back to Cape Campbell. The yacht Banker struggled vainly against 50-mile-an-hour gales, and the yacht was more than halfway to Lyttelton when she turned back. An RNZAF aircraft spotted a yacht in distress about 30 miles south of Kaikoura at 3 p.m. on Friday the 26th. The yacht ended up being the Astral, which had been dismasted. A fishing trawler tried to tow the Astral, but eventually the crew had to abandon ship and leave the yacht. Wreckage of the Husky was found on Saturday afternoon in Ohuro Bay in Wellington, and none of her 4 crew were ever found. The yacht Aurora was found next. That's the smallest boat in the fleet at 22 feet. They were found hove to in deep water, well clear of land, while riding to a sea anchor. They drifted as far north as Napier. Once the weather cleared, they eventually turned the boat around and sailed back to Wellington. The Argo and her crew were never seen again. There were some reports of some faint radio communications, but they were never confirmed. The search went on for days and days, and I think the family actually did their own search and came up with nothing as well. In the 80s, John and Linda Davies bought Fantasy and sailed around New Zealand, well, all over New Zealand anyway. And John spent a lot of time and effort restoring her back to her former glory. And it was during that process that we learnt to sail on this boat through Akaroa and to Littleton. John and Dad spent hours refitting this boat, a full refit, top to bottom. And there's a few stories to be told, I'm sure. I'm sure Dad would be able to tell you about the time that he ran it aground in Akaroa. After the 2011 Christchurch earthquakes, a fully restored Fantasy had been moved up to Golden Bay, where she sat at anchor on a mooring ball in the harbour until February 2013. Fantasy sinks while being on the mooring ball after the harbour masters moved the mooring balls around to make more space for more boats in the harbour. A lengthy court battle ensued, which took, I think, 4 years before eventually paying out the money for the boat, obviously. So in that 4 years, she sat on the hard. After eventually winning the court battle, John didn't have the time or the energy to put in to bringing her once again back up to her former glory. And so the decision was made to put her up for a sale, essentially. And Dad actually saw her on Facebook for $1 and recognised the boat. We also had lost contact with John over the years since the earthquake. And so it kind of brought us all back together again, which was really cool. And here we are, refitting the boat. This has been one of the more challenging videos I've ever done, partly because I want to honour those that died in the race. And I also wanted to tell an accurate story sort of about the history of the boat we've just bought. So, yeah. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share. And also, if you've got any information about the 1951 Canterbury Centennial Yacht Race that you want to share with us, leave a comment. I'm pretty keen to find out any information. If you've got a family member or you know somebody or whatever, or you've done some more research that I haven't got, or you want to tell me some stuff I got wrong, because I'm sure I probably got some stuff wrong, leave a comment. Cheers, guys.